Now we're live.
Now we're live. And all of the dark secrets shall forever remain dark.
Sure. Until next week when they see what color I'm dyeing my hair.
Oh. I got black beeswax for doing pizonki, so that's what we'll be up to tonight.
Lovely.
Assuming I can find all of this stuff. It's all around here somewhere. I had to clear the exercise equipment out of Sebastian's room. Where are we going? There we go. Because Sebastian's back from college.
Very nice. How was his first year? First year, right?
First year. He loved it.
I thought he would.
Yeah. He's living outside of Chicago. We're trying real hard not to give him grief about how he's got a little pot belly now. Because he lived like a college student does, off of pizza and soda.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's no need for any body shaming.
No body shaming. It's hard to resist, though, because he's always been so skinny.
Well, speaking as a person who's also always been so skinny, thank you for resisting, because I'd be real pissed off.
I resist.
Good. Anywho.
I had other things to share. What were they? Oh, and we're reading Neverending Story with the teenagers. And I am more and more convinced that it would be an epic film trilogy if anyone decided to be a little more close
True
to
the book.
Yeah. Like the one from the 80s will always be precious. Those sequels will always be terrible, but you could do something completely new. And I want...
Or like a miniseries?
I don't know about a miniseries. Speaking of series, Shadow and Bone.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't watch beyond about the 3rd or 4th episode.
Okay. I have not watched it. I read the book, though. I don't think it's very similar to the book, though.
The show feels like it's entirely constructed out of tropes. Like, there's the couple that have been best friends since childhood and refuse to admit they're in love, and there's the reluctant chosen one, and...
Yeah, books not like that.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's a very frustrating show to watch. Mainly, I got to the point where the girl believes that her best friend since childhood is refusing to write back to her instead of wondering whether her letters are getting intercepted. Because they obviously have been, and everyone around her is like, yeah, we're controlling everything you do and see. Ha ha ha. But that hasn't occurred to her as a solution for why she hasn't heard back from him. And I'm like, you're an idiot. I can't do this. So I went and started watching The Nevers. I didn't want to like The Nevers because we know that Joss Whedon is an asshole, and I wanted to. It's so good. It's so good. He may be a dick, but he's such a good storyteller. And the acting... The costumes, the concept, everything about it, it's got layers. You got to be paying attention. All of the characters are really lovable. It's 90% women. And I just fucking love it. So that's when it's got my recommendation if you do get around to watching TV again at some point.
Right. I can recommend... I haven't really been watching any YouTube that I think you would enjoy. Sorry.
What are you watching?
I haven't watched any YouTube that I think you would enjoy that you haven't already seen, because I've been watching like Mariah Elizabeth on repeat.
Uh-huh.
And if you haven't watched Tasting History with Max Miller, you should, but I feel like you have, right?
Not in ages, actually. That was one where I watched 1 or 2 and went, I like him, and then forgot about it. You should
start watching it. He did a 15th century pizza recipe this week.
Nice.
He takes one bite and goes, "That's not pizza." But yeah, I've been watching that. I've been watching some hair channels on account of I'm doing things with my hair. So, yeah.
I have discovered that it's bad to like marathon Dominic Noble just before bed, because then you hear his voice in your dreams critiquing all of the things that are going on and how different they are from the book.
Yeah, I can't marathon anything before going to bed. I used to have that problem with Doctor Who because I would always want to watch, like, do a Doctor Who marathon. But if I watch more than 2 episodes in a row, I dream that I'm the Doctor, and it's not fun.
He's got a heavy life.
Yeah, it's not a good time.
No. Yeah, do watch The Nevers. I want to discuss it with you. I also wouldn't mind discussing what I do and don't like with about Shadow and Bone with you, but since I'm only 3 episodes in and unlikely to continue, there's a side plot about 3 characters that I really do like. And it's funny that because they cast the one of them to look evil. He's, if you put him in a lineup, you're like, oh, he's the villain, and then you find out he's, kind of badass, but otherwise really.
Oh, that's Kaz, right?
That's Kaz.
Yeah. So okay, so here's the difference. Here's the major difference that I've been able to figure out between the books and the book. I think it's a series, and the show. In the book, Kaz is the main character. It's about him and Inej and Jesper.
Yeah.
The characters that are the main characters in the show aren't characters in the book.
They don't exist?
I'm pretty sure one of them sort of exists. The girl sort of exists, but she's not a chosen one. And as far as I can tell from like gift sets and what I've learned, the guy doesn't exist at all.
That is fucking awesome, because I keep watching and going, I wish these 3 were the main characters. Like every time they come on screen, I'm like, Jesper he's like Doc Holliday, only younger and cuter, and Inej is so like intense and skilled, and there's a moment that they did in the film or in the show where you're like, okay, Kaz is evil, or they're definitely telegraphing that he's evil. He's hardcore, like he's got this business, and then he says something to Inej where you're like, oh, he's in love. Oh, bless his little heart. She says something about the girl. She's like me, and he just looks at her and says, "There's no one like you," and you're like. Why are they no screen time?
I don't understand, because the book is literally about them. They're the main characters.
They're really good characters.
And so the character that I think is most similar to the like heroine in the book or in the show is she like works at one of the brothels that they know of. Like she's not any kind of chosen one. She's not a soldier. She's not any of that. But she does like, I forget what her power is. She does have like the Grisha powers, but
maybe that's why that part of the story feels so weak.
I think it is, because it's not like you should check out the book. I think you would really like it, and you will find that they cast Kaz perfectly. He is exactly the way that they described.
Awesome.
And he is kind of like, he's an anti-hero. He's kind of a dick.
Except when it concerns his little tiny family, and for them, he'll sacrifice or do anything without fuss.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that he fucking put his club up as collateral for Inej, and then never tells her, at least not in the first 3 episodes, that he did that. He just does it. Mm-hmm. Never uses that as leverage against her or anything. I'm like, and then we go back to the other guys, and I'm like,
Well, and here's the other thing is that there's 5 main characters in the book. Mm-hmm. So it's Kaz, Inej, Jesper, the girl character, I forget her name. What's her name in the show? It might be the same.
Alina?
Yeah, I think that's the same. And then there's a character named Matthias. Is that the guy, like...
No, it's Mal. Mal is the love interest thing.
Yeah, no. So Matthias is a guy that they rescue from death row. And he and Alina hate each other. He thinks she's a witch and he keeps trying to kill her.
Okay.
And then they like fall in love. But the point is, it has nothing to do with anything that you don't like about the show.
The relationship they decided to invent for the show apparently has Alina and Mal have been in love since they were kids. Neither of them have ever expressed that, and they both managed to avoid getting tested for Grisha powers when they were children because they were terrified of being taken from each other. So their entire relationship is based on Crab Bucket.
It literally has nothing to do with the plot of the book at all.
What a relief! All right, I'll try it out then.
Yep, Six of Crows, highly recommend.
Books. Speaking of books.
Oh, speaking of books, I was like, what about books? I don't know. What about them? We are at the stairs of Cirith Ungol.
Woot! Incidentally, before I forget to say it this time, the other person whose hand is specifically described as brown is Sam's. So Sam can be black in our headcanon as well.
Could be. I don't know how I
discussed that live. We were talking about how Tom Bombadil is described as having a brown hand and therefore could be a blue-eyed black man, which would be fucking awesome.
I don't know how I feel about like Sam being the like subservient character.
I hadn't even thought of that. I've been thinking of him as the hero for so long.
I mean, Sam is the best character, don't get me wrong. You just get into some tropes there that need
bad, unfortunate tropes. Yeah, you can't do that, can you? Oh, Master takes on whole different ring.
Yeah, we don't.
No.
I don't like that.
No.
We're gonna just move on from that and never think about it again.
Forgive me, interwebs. Sam is the hero, though.
Yeah.
Die.
Sam is the best character in this book. I will not be taking any questions at this time. Also, I know you don't have any because I'm right.
None whatsoever. And I'm going. Oh, I wish you could smell this. This beeswax is so beeswaxy.
Oh, I love that smell. I have a perfume that smells a lot like beeswax.
Oh yeah,
nice. It smells like beeswax and leather.
That is what is it called?
It's called Time Does Not Bring Relief, and it was a seasonal one that Black Phoenix put out. So it's like beeswax.
Black Phoenix.
Oh, well, yeah, like 90% of my perfumes are Black Phoenix. But the main scents on me are beeswax and leather, but there's also some violet in there, so it gets a little sweet.
Okay.
And I forget what the other notes were. I could look it up, but I feel like you'd probably rather I just read.
I would rather you just read. I'm going to find my eggs that I was working on.
Chapter VIII. The stairs of Cirith Ungol. Okay, one more tangent before I start reading.
Okay.
You know that song? And the chorus is, "How am I going to be an optimist about this?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget who does it, but you know the one I'm talking about.
How am I going to be an optimist about this? Yeah.
So I have seen a post where someone said, "How am I going to be an octopus about this?" I'm never singing the correct lyrics ever again.
Oh my goodness. Oh, there's a lighter. Every time I talk about my the Elementals project being my magnificent octopus, people look at me funny, but I swear it's from Blackadder.
Yeah, I know. I immediately heard it in Baldric's voice.
Thank you. It's so sad when they're like, "What?"
You mean your opus? No!
Magnificent
Get on my level!
octopus.
All right. The Stairs of Cirith Ungol. For real, though.
For real.
Gollum was tugging at Frodo's cloak and hissing with fear and impatience. "We must go," he said. "We mustn't stand here. Make haste." Reluctantly, Frodo turned his back on the west and followed as his guide led him out into the darkness of the east. They left the ring of trees and crept along the road towards the mountains. This road, too, ran straight for a while, but soon began to bend away southwards until it came right under the great shoulder of rock that they had seen from the distance. Black and forbidding it loomed above them, darker than the dark sky behind. Crawling under its shadow, the road went on, and rounding it, sprang east again and began to climb steeply. Frodo and Sam were plodding along with heavy hearts, no longer able to care greatly about their peril. Frodo's head was bowed. His burden was dragging him down again. As soon as the great crossroads had been passed, the weight of it, almost forgotten in Ithilien, had begun to grow once more. Now, feeling the way become steep before his feet, he looked wearily up. Then he saw it, even as Gollum had said that he would. The city of the Ringwraiths. He cowered against the stony bank. A long tilted valley, a deep gulf of shadow, ran back far into the mountains. Upon the further side, some way
Hold
within
up
the
a
valley...
sec. What is it? Yes, what?
Shall I keep you company?
Well, I'm reading with Heather. You're going to get spoilers if you come in, because we're reading Lord of the Rings. I love you. Aw. Bless his heart. Oh, go ahead.
Right, where was I? Oh, yes. A long tilted valley, a deep gulf of shadow, ran back far into the mountains. Upon the further side, some way within the valley's arms, high on a rocky seat upon the black knees of the Ephel Dua, stood the walls and tower of Minas Morgul. All was dark about it, earth and sky, but it was lit with light. Not the imprisoned moonlight welling through the marble halls of Minas Ithil long ago, tower of the moon, fair and radiant in the hollow of the hills. Paler, indeed, than the moon ailing in some slow eclipse was the light of it now, wavering and blowing like a noisome exhalation of decay, a corpse light, a light that illuminated nothing. In the walls and tower, windows showed like countless black holes looking inward into emptiness. But the topmost course of the tower revolved slowly, first one way and then another, a huge ghostly head leering into the night. For a moment, the three companions stood there, shrinking, staring up with unwilling eyes. Gollum was the first to recover. Again he pulled at their cloaks urgently, but he spoke no word. Almost he dragged them forward. Every step was reluctant, and time seemed to slow its pace, so that between the raising of a foot and the setting of it down, minutes of loathing passed. That's how I feel when I try to go hiking.
Right? That is definitely a mood.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily hiking for me, but been there. Totally fucking been there. Thank you, Jonold.
Indeed.
For the words.
I'm mostly kidding about, well, no, I'm not really kidding about hiking. I really don't like it. Did I ever tell you I put something on my dating profile about I don't want to go hiking because everybody just wants to go hiking?
No, but that's awesome.
I stopped getting matches after that. So they came slowly to the white bridge. Here the road, gleaming faintly, passed over the stream in the midst of the valley and went on, winding deviously up toward the city's gate, a black mouth opening in the outer circle of the northward walls. Wide flats lay on either bank, shadowy meads filled with pale white flowers. Luminous these were, too, beautiful and yet horrible of shape, like the demented forms in an uneasy dream, and they gave forth a faint, sickening charnel smell. An odor of rottenness filled the air. From mead to mead the bridge sprang. Figures stood there at its head, carven with cunning in forms human and bestial, but all corrupt and loathsome. The water flowing beneath was silent, and it steamed, but the vapor that rose from it, curling and twisting about the bridge, was deadly cold. Frodo felt his senses reeling and his mind darkening. And then suddenly, as if some force were at work other than his own will, he began to hurry, tottering forward, his groping hands held out, his head lolling from side to side. Both
Zombie!
right? I was just thinking that. Both Sam and Gollum ran after him. Sam caught his master in his arms as he stumbled and almost fell, right on the threshold of the bridge. "Not that way! No, not that way!" whispered Gollum, but the breath between his teeth seemed to tear the heavy stillness like a whistle, and he cowered to the ground in terror. "Hold up, Mr. Frodo," muttered Sam in Frodo's ear. "Come back. Not that way. Gollum says not, and for once I agree with him." Frodo passed his hand over his brow and wrenched his eyes away from the city on the hill. The luminous tower fascinated him, and he fought the desire that was on him to run up the gleaming road towards its gate. At last, with an effort, he turned back, and as he did so, he felt the ring resisting him, dragging at the chain about his neck. And his eyes, too, as he looked away, seemed for a moment to have been blinded. The darkness before him was impenetrable. Gollum, crawling on the ground like a frightened animal, was already vanishing into the gloom. Sam, supporting and guiding his stumbling master, followed after him as quickly as he could. Not far from the near bank of the stream there was a gap in the stone wall beside the road. Through this they passed, and Sam saw that they were on a narrow path that gleamed faintly at first, as the main road did, until climbing up above the meads of deadly flowers, it faded and went dark, winding its crooked way up into the northern sides of the valley. Along this path the hobbits trudged side by side, unable to see Gollum in front of them except when he turned back to beckon them on. Then his eyes shone with a green-white light, reflecting the noisome Morgul sheen, perhaps, or kindled by some answering mood within. Of that deadly gleam, and of the dark eye-holes, Frodo and Sam were always conscious, ever glancing fearfully over their shoulders, never dragging their eyes back to find the darkening path. Slowly they labored on. As they rose above the stench and vapors of the poisonous stream, their breath became easier and their heads clearer. But now their limbs were deadly tired, as if they had walked all night under a burden, or had been swimming long against a heavy tide of water. At last they could go no further without a halt. Frodo stopped and sat down on a stone. They had now climbed up to the top of a great hump of bare rock. Ahead of them there was a bay in the valley side, and round the head of this the path went on, no more than a wide ledge with a chasm on the right. Across the sheer southward face of the mountain it crawled upwards until it disappeared into the blackness above. "I must rest a while, Sam," whispered Frodo. "It's heavy on me, Sam, lad. Very heavy. I wonder how far I can carry it. Anyway, I must rest before we venture on to that." He pointed to the narrow way ahead. "Shh, shh," hissed Gollum, hurrying back to them. "Shh." His fingers were on his lips, and he shook his head urgently. Tugging at Frodo's sleeve, he pointed towards the path, but Frodo would not move. "Not yet," he said. "Not yet." Weariness, and more than weariness, oppressed him. It seemed as if a heavy spell was laid on his mind and body. "I must rest," he muttered. This is how I feel when the air pressure goes down before a storm.
Yep. That's where I was at yesterday evening. Just nope. Just nope.
Yeah. I could hear it. I was surprised you wanted to even try to podcast. I was like, you don't sound good.
It's like, no, I've got to. Never mind.
You were like, "I'm fine." And I was like, "I don't think you are." But we're here now.
Frodo managed to work through it. I can too.
Frodo was saving the world. We're just doing a podcast. We can postpone.
Our podcast might save the world. You don't know.
It's true. I have no proof that it won't.
It's unlikely.
I wasn't going to say that. At this, Gollum's fear and agitation became so great that he spoke again, hissing behind his hand as if to keep the sound from unseen listeners in the air. "Not here, no. Not rest here. Fools. Eyes can see us. When they come to the bridge, they will see us. Come away. Climb. Climb. Come. Come, Mr. Frodo, said Sam. He's right again. We can't stay here. All right, said Frodo in a remote voice, as of one speaking half asleep. I will try. Wearily, he got to his feet. But it was too late. At that moment, the rock quivered and trembled beneath him. The great rumbling noise, louder than ever before, rolled in the ground and echoed in the mountains. Then, with searing suddenness, there came a great red flash. Far beyond the eastern mountains, it leapt into the sky and splashed the lowering clouds with crimson. In that valley of shadow and cold, deathly light, it seemed unbearably violent and fierce. Peaks of stone and ridges like notched knives sprang out in staring black against the uprushing flame in Gorgoroth. Then came a great crack of thunder. And Minas Morgul answered. There was a flare of vivid lightnings, forks of blue flame springing up from the tower and from the encircling hills into the sullen clouds. The earth groaned, and out of the city there came a cry, mingled with harsh high voices of birds of prey and the shrill neighing of horses wild with rage and fear. There came a rending screech, shivering, rising swiftly to a piercing pitch beyond the range of hearing. The hobbits wheeled round towards it and cast themselves down, holding their hands upon their ears. As the terrible cry ended, falling back through a long, sickening wail to silence, Frodo slowly raised his head. Across the narrow valley, now almost on a level with his eyes, the walls of the evil city stood, and its cavernous gate, shaped like an open mouth with gleaming teeth, was gaping wide. And out of this gate an army came. All of that host was clad in sable, dark as the night. Against the wan walls... Wan? Wan, right?
Totally wan.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Also, someone at work the other day called me Obi-Wan Kenobviously, and I'm honestly not sure if it was a compliment or an insult, but I really enjoyed it.
I love it. It's totally an insult, but I love it.
It's possible.
I might use it.
And the luminous pavement of the road, Frodo could see them, small black figures in rank upon rank, marching swiftly and silently, passing outwards in an endless stream. Before them went a great cavalry of horsemen moving like ordered shadows, and at their head was one greater than all the rest. A rider, all black, save that on his hooded head he had a helm like a crown that flickered with a perilous light. Now he was drawing near the bridge below, and Frodo's staring eyes followed him, unable to wink or to withdraw. Surely there was the Lord of the Nine Riders returned to earth to lead his ghastly host to battle. Here, yes, here indeed was the haggard king, whose cold hand had smitten down the ring-bearer with his deadly knife. The old wound throbbed with pain, and a great chill spread towards Frodo's heart. Even as these thoughts pierced him with dread and held him bound as if with a spell, the rider halted suddenly, right before the entrance of the bridge, and behind him all the host stood still. There was a pause, a dead silence. Maybe it was the ring that called to the Wraith Lord, and for a moment he was troubled, sensing some other power within his valley. This way and that turned the dark head, helmed and crowned with fear, sweeping the shadows with its unseen eyes.
I want to hear this story told someday from the perspective of the ring itself.
I've seen a fan comic from the perspective of the ring.
And then I was like, dude, I'm over here. Yo, come on. And he was like, did I hear something? And I was like, okay, little dude, put me on right now. Put me on so he can see me. And the little dude was like, I've got friends, so I'm not gonna. And I was like, ah! And then the general was like, okay, never mind. And I was like, yeah!
Sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Let's see. Frodo waited like a bird at the approach of a snake, unable to move. And as he waited, he felt, more urgent than ever before, the command that he should put on the ring.
Put it on.
Put me on! But great as the pressure was, he felt no inclination now to yield to it. He knew that the ring would only betray him, and that he had not, even if he put it on, the power to face the Morgul king. Not yet. There was no longer any answer to that command in his own will, dismayed by terror though it was, and he felt only the beating upon him of a greater power from outside. It took his hand, and as Frodo watched with his mind, not willing it, but in suspense, as if he looked on some old story far away, it moved the hand inch by inch towards the chain upon his neck. Then his own will stirred. Slowly it forced the hand back, and set it to find another thing, a thing lying hidden near his breast. Cold and hard it seemed as his grip closed on it, a phial of Galadriel, so long treasured, and almost forgotten till that hour. As he touched it, for a while all thought of the ring was banished from his mind. He sighed and bent his head. At that moment the Wraith King turned and spurred his horse and rode across the bridge, and all his dark host followed him. Maybe the elven hoods defied his unseen eyes, and the mind of his small enemy, being strengthened, had turned aside his thought. But he was in haste. Already the hour had struck, and at his great master's bidding he must march with war into the west. Soon he had passed like a shadow into shadow down the winding road, and behind him still the black ranks crossed the bridge. So great an army had never issued from that vale since the days of Isildur's might. No host so fell and strong in arms had yet assailed the forts of Anduin, and yet it was but one, and not the greatest, of the hosts that Mordor now sent forth. Frodo stirred, and suddenly his heart went out to Faramir. The storm has burst at last, he thought. This great array of spear and swords is going to Osgiliath. Will Faramir get across in time? He guessed it, but did he know the hour? And who now can hold the fords when the King of the Nine Riders comes? And other armies will come. I am too late. All is lost. I tarried on the way. All is lost, even if my errand is performed. No one will ever know. There will be no one I can tell. It will be in vain. Overcome with weakness, he wept. And still the host of Morgul crossed the bridge. Then at a great distance, as if it came out of memories of the Shire, some sunlit early morning when the day called and doors were opening, he heard Sam's voice speaking. "Wake up, Mr. Frodo, wake up." Had the voice added, "Your breakfast is ready," he would hardly have been surprised. Certainly Sam was urgent. "Wake up, Mr. Frodo, they're gone," he said. "Yay! I feel despair. Only the voice of my friend can call me back from the brink." Let's see. There was a dull clang. The gates of Minas Morgul had closed. The last rank of spears had vanished down the road. The tower still grinned across the valley, but the light was fading in it. The whole city was falling back into a dark brooding shade and silence, yet still it was filled with watchfulness. "Wake up, Mr. Frodo. They're gone, and we'd better go too. There's something still alive in that place. Something with eyes, or a seeing mind if you take me. And the longer we stay in one spot, the sooner it will get on to us. Come on, Mr. Frodo." Frodo raised his head and then stood up. Despair had not left him, but the weakness had passed. He even smiled grimly, feeling now as clearly as a moment before he had felt the opposite, that what he had to do if he could, and that whether Faramir or Aragorn or Elrond or Galadriel or Gandalf or anyone else ever knew about it was beside the purpose. He took his staff in one hand and the phial in the other. When he saw that the clear light was already welling through his fingers, he thrust it into his bosom and held it against his heart. Then turning
Only
from
Tolkien could write the phrase "thrust it into his bosom" and have it be clean.
a solid point. Sometimes I'm reading things and I'm not really listening to the specific words when I'm reading out loud, so I hadn't even noticed that. Let's see. Then turning from the city of Morgul, now no more than a gray glimmer across a dark gulf, he prepared to take the upward road. Gollum, it seemed, had crawled off along the ledge into the darkness beyond when the gates of Minas Morgul opened, leaving the hobbits where they lay. He now came creeping back, his teeth chattering and his fingers snapping. Foolish, silly, he hissed. Make haste. You mustn't think danger has passed. It hasn't. Make haste. They did not answer, but they followed him onto the climbing ledge. It was little to the liking of either of them, not even after facing so many other perils. But it did not last long. Soon the path reached a rounded angle where the mountainside swelled out again, and there it suddenly entered a narrow opening in the rock. They had come to the first stair that Gollum had spoken of. The darkness was almost complete, and they could see nothing much beyond their hands' stretch. But Gollum's eyes shone pale several feet above as he turned back towards them. Careful, he whispered. Steps, lots of steps. Must be careful. Care was certainly needed. Frodo and Sam at first felt easier, having now a wall on either side, but the stairway was almost as steep as a ladder, and as they climbed up and up, they became more and more aware of the long black fall behind them. And the steps were narrow, spaced unevenly, and often treacherous. They were worn and smooth at the edges, and some were broken, and some cracked as foot was set upon them. The hobbits struggled on until at last they were clinging with desperate fingers to the steps ahead, and forcing their aching knees to bend and straighten. And ever as the stair cut its way deeper into the sheer mountain, the rocky walls rose higher and higher above their heads. At length, just as they felt that they could endure no more, they saw Gollum's eyes peering down at them again. We're up, he whispered. First stair is past. Clever hobbits to climb so high. Very clever hobbits. Just a few more little steps, and that's all. Yes. Dizzy and very tired. I just checking to see if I could get through this before I think so.
Right.
Dizzy and very tired, Sam and Frodo following him crawled up the last step and sat down rubbing their legs and knees.
Damn it. Oh, got a drip on my moon.
Oh no.
It's okay.
Are you still doing Star Wars things?
No, this is just an owl.
Oh, okay. I was like, it doesn't look like a Star Wars thing, but okay. Sat down rubbing their legs and knees, also a mood.
Yes.
They were in a deep, dark passage that seemed still to go up before them, though at a gentler slope and without steps. Gollum did not let them rest long. There's another stair still, he said. Much longer stair. Rest when we get to the top of next stair. Not yet. Sam groaned. Longer, did you say? He asked. Yes, longer, said Gollum. Not so difficult. Hobbits have climbed the straight stair. Next comes the winding stair. And what after that? Said Sam. We shall see, said Gollum softly. Oh yes, we shall see. I thought you said there was a tunnel.
That's sinister.
Right? I feel very happy about how creepy I made that, actually. I thought you said there was a tunnel, said Sam. Isn't there a tunnel or something to go through? Sam, not getting the subtext, or getting it and pretending he doesn't actually.
Like, are you planning something?
What's funny? Did you think of a joke? Can you share it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. There's a tunnel, said Gollum. Hobbits can rest before they try that. If they get through that, they'll be nearly at the top. Very nearly, if they get through. Oh, yes. Frodo shivered. The climb had made him sweat, but now he felt cold and clammy, and there was a chill draught in the dark passage blowing down from the invisible heights above. He got up and shook himself. Well, let's go on, he said. This is no place to sit in.
Indeed.
Indeed. Oof.
Yikes.
Yikes. I was reading a really...
Go ahead.
Oh, thinking of owls, I was reading a really interesting thing earlier today about how when birds imprint onto humans, like hunting birds,
Mm-hmm.
You have to be really careful about how you handle them because they will then see other humans as territorial threats.
Oh my.
Yeah, so some birds are so territorial that they'll attack humans thinking, they're territorial threats. So they have to be dual imprinted. And I think owls were the one they were talking about. You have to raise them to imprint on humans, but also with another owl, like a sibling, so that they understand that they're birds.
Ah,
Increase the aggression.
right.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fucking awesome. And I wonder if that's part of the reason for like puppets and things that you see in videos of people raising baby birds.
Yeah, they're trying to, if they're planning to release them, they can't have them imprinting on the humans. And that's also why some falconers will wear those like hats that the falcons mate with, because the falcon thinks the human is their mate. And they have to like encourage that because that's the only way to keep the falcon from attacking them.
That is fucking awesome.
Isn't that fascinating?
It totally is. And of course, if you're a falconer, you don't, it's not that big a deal to you if it thinks that it's one of you, because you're not intending to release it into the wild where it will then, go to a campground and wreak merry hell.
Exactly. But if you are planning to release it, you can't have that. Fun facts.
So fun.
On that note,
yes,
it is time for us both to eat dinner.
Yes, there's BLTs waiting for me. So
excellent. Mwah.
Cuidado.
Yeah,
Bye for now.
Bye.